All right. Let me call the Parklands meeting of September 12th, 2024 to order. And Ms. Rossick, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we've got quite a full house tonight. This is amazing. And it's my first meeting I've chaired, so I'm assuming that was an exciting enough pull for everyone to come. Seriously, let's get the meeting going because it looks like we have a lot to do. Can we start with the roll call, please?
Committee member Rossick?
Here.
Meeting member, Nye.
Here.
Vice Chair McCabe.
He's no longer the vice chairman.
Yeah.
And Chair Cooper.
I'm here.
We have a forum.
All right. Why don't we start with the Public Work Director's report?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Derek Wiesk, and today is also my first Parklands committee meeting. I just want to announce a couple things. First of all, since your last meeting, we've had some new additions to the staff. I've been here about 2 weeks now, just getting familiar with the city. To my right is Tamika Cook, who just started as your city clerk. And then Carrie Kelman was recently appointed by the city council to be your new city manager. So just want to let you know those three names. And then finally, as had been mentioned, the former chair of the committee submitted a resignation this week, so he'll no longer be joining us. That's Paul McCabe. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Why don't we entertain any communications with from the public before we get into our actual agenda? I have several cards here. It's not clear how many want to speak. Just let me outline the rules quickly for you. Normally, in order to speak, you have to fill out one of these requests to speak. So if anyone hasn't done that and is interested in speaking, then you should fill out one of these cards. Your limit is 3 minutes on any public communication, and we certainly welcome to hear what everybody has to say. So who wants to start? Okay, come on up.
If it's not on the agenda.
Has to make sure it's not on.
Yeah. And just to make sure, is this an agenda item or something not on the agenda?
This is on your agenda.
Oh, no, we're not doing that quite yet. You'll get your opportunity, though, don't worry.
Number 3.
Okay. Yeah, so right now, we just want to hear from anyone in the public who just wants to make a statement. You have 3 minutes if you're interested. And if there isn't anyone who wants to do that, we'll get right to the agenda. Did anyone fill out a card who just wants to speak on a non-agenda item? Going once, going twice. Okay. All right. Well, with that, then let's dive into our agenda this evening. First of all, do we have, well, let's start with agenda item number 1, which is PC 57724. An application to remove 6 Peruvian pepper trees located in the parkways on Epping Road adjacent to 2100 Paseo del Mar and 2101 Chelsea Road. Do we have a staff report?
Good evening, Chair Cooper, members of the Parklands Committee, members of the audience, and the community. The request tonight is to remove 6 pepper trees, 4 of which are adjacent to 2100 Paseo del Mar, and 2 of which are located in the parkway adjacent to 2101 Chelsea Road. The reason for the application is a view corridor, the blockage of the view corridor. And this happens to be a picture that was taken in 2022, previously, for the previous application, when the same residents came forward to request trimming of these trees. And this is what it is today. The arrows represent the edges of the buildings, and so that would be the corridor. So the scenic view is the ocean, and the tree age, the age of the tree, we're estimating around 16, 17 years. They've been in the ground, and they probably are a little over 20 since they started. There was a previous application to trim the trees by thinning in 2022, PC 56822. And there are 2 letters of support for the removal of the trees that have been submitted. In considering view-related applications when views are or are becoming significantly obstructed, the Parklands Committee shall respect the following considerations as outlined in Resolution R 1813 of the Tree Management Policy. To the greatest extent practical, strive to preserve or enhance scenic views from the main viewing area of a residential structure. 6 Peruvian peppers are requested to be removed. 2 of the peppers are adjacent 2100 Chelsea Road, as we mentioned earlier, and 4 of the pepper trees are adjacent 2100 Paseo del Mar. The 6 pepper trees were requested and planted by the city and are visible in pictures in 2008. And so I'll go through these. This was 2008 at both addresses, and you can see the trees. Looks like I'm a little ahead of myself. The main viewing area is the 2nd story of the outdoor balcony. Seems like maybe the slides are a little out of order. I think maybe I hit the wrong button.
There we go.
So these are in 2012, as you can see, 2016, 2018.
And that's trees
PowerPoint is not moving in my presentation. That's why I'm getting a little confused.
Are you able to advance it yourself and
That's
or
what
it's
I'm
not
doing.
cooperating?
That's interesting.
Let me see. So now we're at this one right here. So the main view area is the 2nd story outdoor balcony of 2101 Chelsea Road. The trees labeled 1 and 2 are not within the view corridor of 2101 Chelsea Road and seem to be added at the request of a neighbor. Pepper tree number 3 appears to be obscuring the home of 2020 Paseo del Mar more than the view. The view is being obstructed by the Peruvian pepper trees 4, 5, and 6, along with the ficus hedge. The street trees adjacent to 2100 Paseo del Mar were approved to be trimmed by the applicants in a previous application, but that has not worked to their satisfaction. They are now asking for all 6 trees to be removed. Wow. This is strange. Not sure what slide I'm on because of this projector here, but
All right, so that's number 3.
yeah, so this is tree number 3 in 2022, and it was 22 feet tall. I'm going to use it manually. And this is the view of the tree in 2022. It was 21 feet tall. And presently, it's 20,
It's not going.
You're trying to advance it now, and it's
Yeah,
not
it's
going?
not cooperating.
no, it's
Okay.
cooperating.
We can see it here, but it's not showing up here.
The way you were flipping through it, I think we've seen a lot of it, but not in any
Maybe this will do it.
order.
How about if you click that? It's not coming up.
It's not coming
How
up.
about if you use that?
That's what we were using, it wasn't moving.
No, it's just stopped. Okay, now it's just stuck, yeah.
Are you cabled into,
It's just stuck on the slide.
yeah, but is your laptop, the cable that goes,
We can see what he wants here, but
no, I know, but maybe it's the cable
Right,
that goes.
the cable. Is it, could it be the cable? Isn't plugged into the...
That's for something different. I wonder if I go resume slideshow. I've done that.
Carl, it was advancing before,
What's that?
it was advancing to the next photo kind of rapidly before.
Yeah.
Are you able to
So we
make
see-
it advance?
We're seeing a change on the screen here,
On here, but not on there.
but it's not.
Do you want to reboot? Just get out and,
Well, I think it's more his connection to
let's see.
the over. I
From
it's
beginning.
connection to the overhead?
Yeah.
Is that what we're having a problem
think
with?
that's what
Yeah.
it is. Because he's
Let's
seeing
take
it
a
on his
5-minute
computer.
recess.
All right. Why don't we do that? Apologize, everybody. We're having, due to technical difficulties,
So,
we need to take a 5-minute recess and get this straightened out, and then we'll move it along. Thanks.
make sure this can...
Work, and maybe it's going to fail.
All right, with no further ado, let's call the meeting back to order.
So the main,
So we were proceeding with the staff report on petition number 1, 2101 Chelsea Road. Mr. Forrester, please go ahead, Carl.
so the main view area, we'll go back just a little bit. The main view area is the second story of the outdoor balcony of 2101 Chelsea Road. The trees labeled 1 and 2 are not within the view corridor of 2101 Chelsea Road and seem to be added for the request of another neighbor. Number 3, Peruvian pepper tree, appears to obscure the home at 2020 Paseo del Mar more than the view. The view is being obstructed by the Peruvian pepper trees 4, 5, and 6, along with the ficus hedge. The street trees adjacent to 2101 Paseo del Mar were approved to be trimmed by the applicants in a previous application, but that has not worked to their satisfaction. They are now asking for all 6 trees to be removed. This is the tree number 3 in 2022, and it was 21 feet tall. Presently, it's 25 feet tall. And this is tree number 4, is presently 22 feet tall. And these are pepper trees 5 and 6, and they're 18 feet tall. And just to recap that, this is the view in 2022, and this is the current view. The Parklands Committee is also to respect the neighborhood character and not significantly alter the unique feeling of a particular neighborhood. The neighborhood character is created by all the trees on Epping Road, but no apparent street tree character exists beyond the 6 pepper trees. The street has very few trees beyond these 6 pepper trees and lacks a definable character. Parklands is also to respect the privacy of neighbors by maintaining, to the greatest extent practical, adequate screening of structures in yards from the sight of neighbors. Privacy and screening will be reduced for 2100 and 2020 Paseo del Mar by the removal of trees number 3, 4, 5, and 6. Removal of trees number 1 and 2 will only reduce privacy for the applicant. There is no public safety issue being created by the trees, and the Peruvian pepper tree is the designated street tree for Epping Road and was designated in 1995, and it was reconfirmed in 2001. The options available to the Parklands Committee tonight is to approve the request to remove the 6 Peruvian pepper trees and approve the conditions of approval that are listed below, deny the request to remove the 6 Peruvian pepper trees, or provide alternative direction. And that would complete the staff report.
All right. Thank you, Carl. Do we have any questions of staff from the committee?
I have a couple of questions, Carl. This might be a question I should know the answer to already, so I apologize. Why don't we let multiple neighbors, or why is the application just for one person versus allowing other neighbors to participate?
It began one time when we had an application to remove 55 trees, and there was 10 houses that were involved, and it required staff to try to see a view from 10 houses and all the neighbors below to try to defend it from each and every vantage point, and it was just too cumbersome. So they reduced it down and determined that the application needs to be viewed from one perspective, one viewpoint, one view location from one applicant.
So, I mean, in theory, if we wanted to change the application, we could change it to 2 or 3 neighbors maximum if we wanted to at some point.
I guess that would be a change of the tree management policy. It wouldn't be a.
Is that in the tree management policy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that was one question. Have you contacted or have you spoken to the residents on Paseo del Mar that the trees are actually on their property?
No, we just posted signs in front of their house.
And they never, after they got the sign, they never contacted you with a pro or a con of removing the trees?
No, there was no communication.
Oh, so we have no idea how they feel about the removal of the trees?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, those are my only two questions.
Go ahead.
Okay. Carl, it seems to me that 1 and 2 are not really in play here. I mean, they don't have anything to do really with the petitioners, and they don't, I went out there and talked to the petitioners and looked at everything, and I don't think those 2 trees really have anything to do with the petitioner's view, and therefore I don't think there's anything to do with those, and I think you concur with that, it sounds like.
Yes, and that's what the staff report had indicated.
And so we're looking at trees 3, 4, 5, and 6, and just to explore options, what about restoring view by replanting there are some palms downstream of these, I noticed, and is that an option, even though it's not a street tree, as far as you're concerned?
There would be an option for 2100 Paseo del Mar because the Kentia palm is the designated street tree for Paseo del Mar, but once it passes the alley and it's in front of 2101 Chelsea Road, the designated street tree would be different. There would be a way for someone to ask for a change of designation or have a different tree in front of their house, but from staff's perspective, on a corner house, the resident has the option to use either tree that's designated for either street. And sometimes they split them, and sometimes they keep a uniform. I believe the applicant at 2100 picked the pepper trees for the screening ability and picked the Kentia palms where they are for the kindness for the view.
Right. So in terms of, and we'll hear from the applicant, I'm sure, but in terms of the view, did you say that you didn't think 3 really affected the view? Because
That was my conclusion because of the view corridor, the view, you can't see through the house at 2020 Paseo del Mar.
all right.
Go back to that slide.
That's okay, because I remember just looking at that tree. It's quite a monster of a tree.
It's the biggest of them all.
Yeah. Okay. And so we've already weighed in on this, as I recall. I was on the committee, and we voted to trim these trees. I guess that's another option. I'm just trying to think about different ways to maybe deal with the view issue. So, okay, that's all the questions I have. Ann?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So back in 2022, you approved to trim 4 trees, and that included the 2 trees that is adjacent to 2101 Chelsea, correct?
That's correct.
And I just don't understand why those 2 trees are petite and the other 4 are, I don't know which other 2 you trimmed, but they're so much bigger. So I was wondering your opinion on that.
You're wanting to know why the other trees have grown robustly and the trees in front of 2101 Chelsea Road have not?
They still look nice, they just aren't that big.
I would tend to believe they were trimmed by different companies at different times.
So of the 4 trees that were trimmed back in 2022, tree 1 and 2 were trimmed? Or do you know that?
Yes.
Okay, and what was the other 2 trees that were trimmed? What were the other 2 trees, 3 and 4? Or 5
All
and
6 trees have been trimmed, but the ones that are in front of or adjacent to 2100 Paseo del Mar have been trimmed in a different way.
But when the other application was made in 2022, which 4 trees were trimmed?
The ones in front of 2100 Paseo del Mar?
Oh,
So 3, 4, 5.
So 3, 4, 5, and 6 were trimmed?
That's correct,
At that time?
yes.
Oh. Oh, okay. So the...
I think Mr.
So 1 and,
Larson-
oh, okay, so 1 and 2, which is on our application today, wasn't part of that application?
No,
Okay, and so they were just trimmed at a later time, perhaps, and by another
that's
company?
my assumption.
Oh, okay.
I think that Mr.
Oh.
Larson could probably answer that question.
Yeah, then maybe they'll answer it. Because it just shows, in your staff report, you say that if you were to annually trim these trees, they could stay more modest, or at the height that you trimmed them.
That is very true, and that could be a possible option
Okay.
to explore.
I mean, it looks like 1 and 2 have been trimmed more recently and are more modest. I mean, maybe they'll talk to that. The other thing is, it has been brought up, even if, like you say, number 3 is, not in their view corridor, but they do bring up, and it was brought up in some of the letters, about the hedge at 2100 Paseo del Mar. What can the height of a hedge be?
The hedge was conditioned by the Planning Commission to be between 8 and 10 feet, and that seems to be the subject of a civil lawsuit at this moment, because it's on private property.
And so,
I don't think we can discuss the hedge. It's,
I know, but
It's,
but
well,
I'm just saying there was letters
Yeah.
that talked about it, so I just wanted to raise it, that that it was, okay, all right. Well, it was part of the letters, Okay, so that's not part of our discussion today,
And
To be
we have
clear-
no jurisdiction at this moment over that hedge, yes.
right?
To-
But the only reason I'm bringing it up is because residents want to know, like, what they come to us about, in terms of their view and what they have to do about their other view issues, in terms of what people...
So there's no rules about the height of hedges in the city unless it's been something that's been made a condition by the Planning Commission when the house was built,
Okay,
which I believe is the reason this
the reason,
hedge
okay,
is part of a condition.
okay. I probably will have other questions after public comment, but that's all I have for you.
Carl, just to follow up, so if we talked about something like yearly trimming of the trees, how would that look? Is that something that the cost of which the applicant can bear as a compromise to taking out the trees in order to enhance his view corridor?
That would be a condition that would be placed on the applicant, not the city.
Right.
how low can the trees be trimmed?
I've thought about that, and they can be trimmed really low, obviously, but it depends on what works for the applicant. And in my mind, I thought that a 15-foot mark may be an appropriate place that they would be able to be brought down and the view of the ocean would be exposed.
And if you took them down to 15 feet, I know you can't predict the weather, but how often would you have to trim them to keep them at that
Annually?
annually? Okay.
I have a go back. On tree number 1 and 2, was that done with a application, or with a permit, I should say?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Lastly, if we did say we wanted to trim them down to 15 feet, would the applicant have to come back every year to do this process to get them trimmed, or could you just say they could do it?
You could make the motion to include that it's approved to do annually.
Okay.
And when they applied for a permit, it would be issued.
Okay.
Right?
I just have one more. So there is
Give you one more
there's a pathway between the two houses?
Yes.
Okay. And is the city maintaining that pathway?
It doesn't look that way,
I
but
know. That's why
we have had discussions with the landscape maintenance company, and all those alleys are supposed to be put on a schedule. We've asked them why they're not done. They're something that's done 3 times a year, and they're in need right now, and so they're scheduling them as we speak.
And that's done through Bennett, right?
Bennett Landscaping, yes.
Okay, so that's something the city could say that they could do better in terms of our contract with Bennett, but in terms of trimming trees, we've always had, or the city has always had issues about being able to do that being able to pay it to a schedule, right?
The city has a very small budget for
Yeah.
tree trimming and a lot of trees.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's why we asked the applicants to help, or the residents to help. Okay.
Right.
All right. Any more questions of staff before we get into the applicant and the speakers? All right. I see that the applicants are here, the Larsons, and is there someone here to speak on behalf of the applicant? I believe there is.
I submitted a card.
I know you did. Come on up, Mr. Rigg.
Mr. Chair, how long will I have to speak?
5 minutes on behalf of the applicant.
So, and,
I imagine you want your PowerPoint too, right?
Wait,
pardon me?
You're going to want your PowerPoint?
I would, please. Yes, please. So the, we were
you get 5 minutes, Mr. Rigg, and let's go. Go ahead.
He has to look at that.
I'm waiting for my PowerPoint.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. And then just in the, we were expecting 3 minutes for each of us, and we can work with the 5 minutes, but what I would do is I would speak for 2.5 minutes, and then Sally would speak for the rest of the 5. That's the way Planning Commission typically does it, is if we're following them, which is 5 minutes for everybody.
That's fine.
Okay,
That's
thank
fine.
you.
The other speakers who aren't applicants get only 3. But
Correct.
you can divide up your 5. how
Thank you,
you
sir.
see fit. Sure.
Okay. And once the,
Keep your fingers crossed.
I know.
It's not connecting again.
Not connected.
That was weird, the way the cameras just froze. The signal was good, but the camera,
There.
yay. Ready?
Let's go.
All right. Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Parklands Committee. My name is Alan Rigg, and I'm assisting Kirby and Sally with their application. Next slide, please. I want to go through the specific findings tonight detailed in the tree management policy, as I strongly believe you're going to find that the findings can be made. Next slide, please. We're showing 6 trees here, but we've learned and agree 1 and 2 are not part of it. We added those for our neighbor as we looked at the overall view impacts. And so let's just forget about them. We won't talk about them. We're going to look at 3 and 6. Next slide, please. Here you can see the ocean beyond when these 4 trees were significantly trimmed after the Larsons received approval from the Parklands Committee to trim them. Also, please note the height of the hedge at the time. And just to clarify, they have great views from their second floor balcony, but these views are identical, if not nearly identical, to what they have in their kitchen, as well as in their living room, so their primary living areas. Next slide, please. Now that the trees in the hedge have grown, obliterating their views, the hedge is on private property, and its growth makes the impacts on the trees even worse as it takes away the view as well. The hedge is the subject of city action, and it's not a civil lawsuit, it's actually a lawsuit against the city by that applicant because they don't want to comply. And they've been, the Larsons have been wronged by this hedge, and the trees have grown and taken away the last little bit of view that they have. It would only seem right and fair to give it back to them. Next slide, please. 1 and 2, let's go next slide because it doesn't matter. To go into the findings, I think it's obvious that the findings for the views being impacted can be made as the views are significant. Next slide, please. And as mentioned by Carl and in the staff report, no consistent character in the neighborhood with street trees, no real street trees on the other side of the street with the high school, and then only a few on our side of the street, and none of them being peppers. So there's really no neighborhood character that's consistent. Next slide, please. There are no privacy impacts, so this finding must be made. As far as the privacy that 2100 Paseo del Mar gets from these trees, it's primarily of their driveway and of their unapproved sports court. So I don't think that there's a lot of reason to maintain their privacy. Next slide, please. The trees have no impact on public safety, as Carl mentioned. I agree. Next slide, please. And it's true that the designated street tree, but they're the only ones on the street. Next slide, please. I know there's been quite a bit of discussion about the tree management policy, but in all the versions I've seen, it all boils down to the 5 findings in the current policy. Per these findings, all 4 trees in this application should be approved to be removed. The Larsons have gone down the path of trimming, and it has been significantly unsuccessful. We estimate the trees would need, if they were at 15 feet, which would still have view impacts, you'd have to initially trim them to 12 so they could grow up to the view again, and those would be stumps. As the trees have grown, the required reduction would leave stumpy trees, and they would have to trim them very, very often. Their payment to the tree bank would allow for the right trees to be planted in the right place and not in anyone's views, furthering the city's efforts to renew our aging urban forest. Thank you for your time, and Sally has the rest. Thank you.
Good evening, and my husband Kirby's here for moral support. Thank you for all of the time and effort that you 3 especially have put into this in our application by coming to our house and looking at everything. We would really like to ask you all tonight to consider, when you're making your decision, what the Planning Commission had already approved on the home at 2100 Paseo del Mar. They were given the approval to build that massive house based on the fact that the view corridors would remain open. That being said, we literally designed our house around that view. We, like Alan had said, our living room, our kitchen, and our outdoor family room, where we can sit and only see a hedge and trees now, was supposed to take in the ocean view. As you know, 2 years ago, we tried this process. We were approved to have the trees trimmed. We spent over $2,000 having that done. We had a small view for a very small window of time. You know, we respectfully are asking that these trees be removed and not put the burden on us as the applicants who were promised a view, designed a home around that view, and then wrongfully have had that view taken away once the street trees went in. When you continuously, we don't think it's fair that we have to continuously spend money to have trees trimmed that would not even restore our view. It's obvious that the neighbor's hedge is also part of the problem, and as of this date, you know, they have not been made to comply by the city. There is legality involved in there. But setting that situation aside, we feel that we have also been wronged by the mere planting in the first place of these trees in the very view corridor that we were told would remain open. You know, we were pointing out that 3, 4, 5, and 6 are the ones that obstruct our view. Number 3 absolutely also obstructs our view. Number 1 and 2, the reason we put those in were out of good faith for our neighbors, because they were also given that same promise of the view corridors to remain open.
I think, is the time elapsed? Okay.
Just to have clarification for Carl's question or somebody's question, all 5 of those trees were trimmed at the same time in 2022?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And just to reiterate one thing, Alan already brought it up, but the trees have gotten, 3 and 4 have gotten so big, and you have to trim them down to 12 feet to be able to see over them. We had when we were in negotiations with 2100 Paseo del Mar for our lawsuit, before the lawsuit actually started, they trimmed the hedge down to 11 feet, which you could see over that. 12 feet, you could still see, but anything higher than 12 feet.
Mr. Larson, I think unfortunately, as for the applicant, I think you guys have extinguished your time. I think we need to move on, but
Okay.
I was glad to hear what you added there.
3 minutes?
Oh, no. For the applicant, you get a total of 5. So we let you go a little bit because I wanted to.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
for your consideration.
Sure. All right. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak on this application from the public? You'll have 3 minutes. And I have several cards here. Who wants to be first?
Why don't you say the names?
Mr. Kucinich, please.
They're Asian, so I don't see them.
State your name and address.
So I'm the guy that lives at 2108 Chelsea Road, across the street from the Larsons and 3 houses down. And I'm the guy that needs number 1 tree talked about. So anyway, let me let you know what's happening. I've lived at 2112 and 2108 since my birth. So I live next door to the house I was born in. And we didn't have corridor views when I was a kid. As a matter of fact, there was a cul-de-sac there was dirt roads down to Paseo del Mar. Paseo del Mar was a dirt road, and everything was garbanzo beans. There was no high school, there was no hill, and I used to be able to see downtown Los Angeles from my front window. But now I have a corridor view, and that number 1 tree would be helpful if it was gone. Bye-bye. Pepper trees are an interesting choice for this because they grow really fast. And once you trim them, they come right back. I've had several on rental properties that I've owned, and they've always been high maintenance and very messy. So anyway, the house that the Larsons built was built after lots of discussion back and forth, and they maintained their height. And unfortunately, the 2100 house I know we're not supposed to talk, the hedge grow up too, and that's killing me as well. So appreciate your consideration on all of this. You know, when those trees weren't there, we didn't even notice when they were there, when they weren't there. So, if they were gone, it wouldn't be a big deal. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Who else wants to speak from the public on this petition involving 2101 Chelsea Road? Come on up.
Yes, I'm Bob Vasey, and I'm here in support of the Larson's application. The CC&Rs of the Homes Association, the general plan of PV Estates, state restrictions have been carefully worked out for every part of PV Estates to accomplish the following results. 1, to preserve the fine views of oceans, mountains, and parks. In 1924, Frederick Olmsted wrote, "Palos Verdes stands head and shoulders above any other great community in these respects. The topography in combination with the street layout gives extraordinary opportunity for permanently unobstructed ocean views, even from relatively small lots over the slopes below. Thus, the heritage of views goes back to the beginnings of the city. In the last 18 to 20 years, there have only been 1% of the city-owned trees that have been removed for views, and most of those have had trees replaced or money put into the tree bank. So it's not like the city's losing trees. One point that was just brought up by Susie earlier was the number of applications. The tree management policy does not limit the number of applicants. Nowhere on there does it limit that. I contacted Anastasia a couple of years ago regarding this, because only on the application form does it say there can only be 1 applicant. And she was unable to provide the background on how that got there. It's reasonable to think that if more than 1 person is blocked, has their views blocked by the same trees, they should be able to apply themselves. We have a situation here tonight, I think, where one of the neighbors is blocked and so forth. I went through this 2 years ago before the Parklands Committee, and there were 5 other neighbors involved with views blocked by the same tree, and it was turned down and denied. So, but again, I would like to see the Larsons get their trees removed. If there's 20,000 trees in the city, and 1% of those trees would be 200 trees, we're talking about 6 trees. So it's not a big deal. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vacy, appreciate that. All right, do we have anyone else who wants to speak on this petition from the public? All right, thank you very much. Now, so, who wants to talk first about this petition? Susie, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I have the tree management policy here, and I just reviewed it, and I don't see that in the tree management policy
It's in the
itself.
application.
In the application, okay, so not in the management policy, in the application, okay.
Put it into the new one that wasn't.
Yeah, that wasn't, we had it in. we
Well, the
put
new one's not approved, so
But
we're
what
going...
he's saying is we
No, I
included
understand.
the application.
Yeah, but the one in 18 doesn't mention, the actual tree management policy doesn't say it, but you're saying the application does,
in the
okay.
application.
Just so we're clear. Yeah, I mean, I love trees. I hate to see trees go down. It breaks my heart when they do. But I also hate to see the residents have to I don't know, be punished for the resident in the front not having any part of this. You know, if they were here and they were explaining to us why they're not trimming the trees, or, you know, what their feeling is. I mean, it's almost, I feel strongly that the residents shouldn't be punished for what they had nothing to do with, and especially after we know that the Planning Commission approved it a different way. So, you know, I definitely think tree number 3 should go down, no question. I support, like I said, I love trees. I hate trees to go down, I do. And I walk this way all the time with my dog. But I also understand the view corridor, and they've been here 2 years ago, and are they going to have to spend $2,000 every year so that they can have a view? That's not what they signed up for either. So, you know, I'm like I said, I don't normally do that, but I'm leaning towards removal of the trees. At least 3, 4, 5, and 6. I understand the idea of 1 and 2, but I think that based on it being a separate application, that would be something separate. But my opinion.
Okay. Ann, do you have any comments?
This is so strange because these other neighbors aren't here, right?
Yeah.
Very strange. In the report, when both houses were coming up at the same time, or being built at the same time, the Paseo Del Mar, you know, was finished first, but they were both being built at about the same time. They had an understanding, and part of that understanding, I thought, included planting these trees. You know, they agreed to plant these trees, and they didn't turn out the way they thought.
But I think they agreed to trim them too.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it-
And I do find it baffling, because I trim our street tree, because I'm not waiting for the city to trim it. But I do find it baffling. I mean, that's just what we do.
Just pretend you didn't hear that, everyone.
No, with a permit, and going through Carl, you know, but I do. I mean, that's something I do as a resident, and I have no problem helping the city out to trim my own tree. But I would feel really weird to have to trim these 4 other trees that are sitting in front of someone else's house. You know, that, I mean, it was, you know, that's a little strange here. I don't think we've had an application quite like this in terms of a view corridor where, you know, the applicant is now, you know, in 2022 took responsibility to get them trimmed, and it would be it is very expensive to get your trees trimmed. So that's what's strange here. I will say, when I pulled up to this house, I first tried to park in front of their house and then saw the signs where you need permit parking. So I parked on the other side of the street. But the reason why I wanted to park on their side is because of the trees. I wanted to park in the shade. It was a really hot day. So I look at trees as not just view, but as providing shade, and shade for when you're walking, and shade for, you know, in terms of the climate changing and so forth. So that's what makes this really hard. But that said, I don't have any, I'm not tied to these trees because I can't see where the applicant should be responsible for trimming their whole corridor when it's in front of someone else's house. So I am leaning towards, you know, the removal of 3, 4, 5, and 6. I never thought I would say that when I was out there. I never thought I would think that. But it just, you know, if the other neighbor had come, it just baffles me.
Yeah, thanks, Ann. So my thoughts are similar to what has been expressed. This is a tough one for me because there's some, as we've noted, there's some kind of strange aspects about this. We don't have the person here whose house is adjacent to these trees, so I take it by their silence that they're not really concerned about this one way or the other. And that's important to me, because clearly if there's a privacy issue, it doesn't seem to be a significant one. It doesn't appear to be a significant one. So the balance of this for me in going there and seeing how the view's affected, clearly there's a view issue. We want to help that if we can. Is there a neighborhood character issue? That's what I'm kind of looking at to balance it. And when I really go out there and I look at this and look at the street, which I've lived here most of my life, so I know the street pretty well, Epping, right at the high school there. I really don't think those trees are going to be a loss to the neighborhood character. And that's kind of the dividing, balancing factor for me. I just don't see that 3, 4, 5, and 6 are really a problem with that. And so I'm leaning towards removing the trees, and again, that's unusual too, to not have another solution. So I'm thinking about, is there something we can replant that isn't going to grow so monstrously wide and high and ruin the Larson's view corridor? So do you have any thoughts about that?
No, we talked about it a little bit when we were on site, and I think we've all expressed that this is very difficult for us because we love trees and we rarely, as you know, approve to take them down. But I think we all agree that there's not anything else. There's really not an option because unless.
Well, actually, I do. I was wondering. So I know we're not supposed to talk about it.
Well,
however,
let me
there is a suit, and can that
Ms.
be?
Nye, let me just clarify that for you. You can talk about the hedge. You can't talk about it in terms of it being an item on our agenda.
Oh, no.
It's part of the surrounding.
Well, I just was.
So it's not something we're going to rule on or recommend, but it
No,
doesn't
I'm
mean
not-
you can't mention the hedge.
Right, I'm mentioning more than the hedge. I'm mentioning that there is a lawsuit, and I was wondering if part of the lawsuit is part of where you can request that they, I think in their testimony, they said that part of them building their home with the planning commission is that they would keep the view corridor open. So isn't keeping the view corridor open asking them to trim their trees?
Stream, because Don's watching.
The street tree.
Is that a question to?
Yeah, that's a question to you.
The trees were planted a long time ago, so I don't believe the trees on the street were part of the planning commission's ruling.
Oh,
They were planted in 2008 or earlier.
with the same resident.
Trees, the pepper trees there,
Yeah.
I personally planted at a request from the neighbors prior to 2008, and that's why I showed you the Google Earth. They were not planted through planning commission's requirement. They were planted a long time ago.
Got it. You planted it by yourself.
No.
All right, well, does anyone want to make a motion with respect to this petition?
I will. I move on PC 57724 that we approve the application to remove four pepper trees, 3, 4, 5, and 6, located in the parkways on Epping Road, adjacent to 2100 Paseo Del Mar and 2101 Chelsea Road.
All right, is there a second?
I'm not sure yet. I have a go back. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
So you planted the trees, you had them planted,
I had them planted,
And-
the city planted them on a request.
and the request was by who?
Either the previous resident at 2100 Paseo Del Mar, I don't know if it was the same person that lives there now.
Oh, you don't know? Oh, okay. So it wasn't the same resident? It was not. It was not? Okay, got it. And they requested it because of what?
Because they wanted street trees?
Oh,
My motion still stands.
I second it.
All right, let's take a vote.
Committee Member Rossett,
Yes.
Committee Member Nye,
Yes.
Chair Cooper.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right. That's a Right. Let's move to our next agenda item, which is item number 2, PCCTP-14-24. This is the concept plan for a habitat mitigation for West Basin recycled water pipeline project. The applicant is the Palos Verdes Golf Club, and David Stuelke is here. But first, is there a staff report?
Yes.
Not yet. Let's let everybody clear out for a second, who wants to.
We're having a little bit of an issue with it, but I think we may be able to get through.
Okay. About the whole school? Okay.
Who are all these people?